today's subject is how to get 90% of your offers accepted when you're working with buyers. Who thinks that that's possible, or who gets 90% accepted?
I think it's possible.
Jay thinks. Jay does. Scott?
Yes, I think it's possible.
Okay. You know, like, what would you say your recent average is, out of curiosity, if you don't mind sharing, Scott?
I would say it's over 90%. I know I told you I had the VA that I got accepted. As a matter of fact, that VA guy, I got him 3 houses accepted. The first one fell through due to appraisal and we backed out. The second one fell through based on inspection. And then the third one, well, that was a whole different story I told you about. That's
yeah, there was a life circumstance that impacted that, and you were able to do the right thing and get your client out, correct?
Correct.
And unfortunately, that doing the right thing didn't get you paid either, right?
Nope, did not get me paid.
But I do believe that there is karma, and that in the long term, that might be the best referral source you ever have.
Absolutely.
I've seen that happen, but you do have to remind them of that, process. Does anybody want to volunteer? Like, when you make an offer, just by and large, like, what's the average of them being accepted? Rob?
Fred is on now.
I see that.
I would say less than 50%.
Less than 50%. Marwan?
I would say the same thing.
Less than 50%. And how many offers are you normally seeing in this market? I'm here in person up in Closter. What do you think there are on, the average listing?
Now it did change. Before we used to see like 15 to 20.
15 to 20 offers, yeah. And now what do you think it's at?
Now maybe 3 to 5, not more.
3 to 5.
Yeah.
So if there's 3 to 5, and are you significantly lower than 50, or you're right around 50%?
I would say I'm significantly lower, but I don't. Most of my work is in being at the building with kind of lower price point, and it's more competitive, I guess.
And I'm gonna come to the people online as well, but out of the people that you work with, right, if you get less than half, how many of the people that come to you guys are actually buying a house through you as a percentage? So if I come to you, right, and my offers are significantly less than 50% are getting accepted, how many people stay with you and eventually buy with you? That start.
Oh, they'll stay with me. I mean, 100% people I work with, and we start and we have the right communication. They will stay with me until we find our house.
Okay. Yeah. So we have 100%, and we have half. Some people get frustrated. Mr. Piccolo, I see you out of the corner of my eye. What are your students experiencing?
Well, lately we haven't been working with too many buyers. We're trying to get listings. We're doing mass cold calling, expires, FISBOs, all kinds of stuff to get listings. We have a couple listings going on, but when I do get buyers, I would say the conversion rate would probably be maybe 50%, 50 to 60%.
And then the other 40% either maybe don't buy or buy with another broker.
No, they'll stick with this. They'll stick with me. What I have my mortgage broker do is call anytime we have an offer. I have my mortgage broker call the listing agent, and then she does her thing, selling the buyer to the listing agent. So our shot is probably 70 to 80% likely to get accepted.
Okay, it's a little bit different now. Does your gut tell you, Ron, that it has a lot to do with the agent and the way that they behave, or the clients that they choose to work with? What do you think has more of an impact?
Are you saying if it's the buyer?
So So in a transaction, right, in a buying transaction, I think a lot of us look at it and we say, my buyer is not reasonable. This is what I see the industry do. That's why we're not getting offers accepted. But I'm asking you, as somebody who coaches a lot of people, how much of that is the buyer or the product that we're working with, and how much of that is the way that we influence them to behave? So is it picking the wrong buyer, or is it we're saying the wrong thing when somebody's more successful than somebody else? Like I have somebody that's 50% of them, you know, wind up buying with them, and somebody else that says virtually 100%. So is that maybe Robert's picking the wrong people to work with, and that's why he's not converting at a higher rate, or is it the process that we're putting him through? Good question, right?
Yeah, it's a great question. Sometimes you do get unreasonable buyers that are not realistic, and they want. We're working with one now that's paying $300,000 cash, and we can't find him anything because he's so particular about what he wants. So it's almost to a point where we're just saying, you know, hey, you know, we're giving you what we have, and you know, it is what it is. It's going to have to change his criteria or change his location. So, you want me to put it on a percentage value, or I mean, I don't. It's hard to say. You know, we don't.
Okay. Well, I mean, it nonetheless, it's thought provoking, right? Like, is it the client that walks through the door, the buyer, right? Or is it the expectations or the process that we put them through in order to be successful on a transaction? Because ignorantly, I thought early on in my career that, you know, if we have a bunch of competent people here, a qualified buyer comes through, if they met with any one of our qualified agents, the outcome would be very similar. But I'm doubting that now. I think that we have a lot more influence into the process and the outcome than we can ever imagine. Does that resonate with you, Ron, working with new people? Go ahead.
Excuse me.
Talking to me or Robert?
I don't know. So I thought somebody had called my name out with a question, but I mean, I tend to think that, you know, we need to have the skill set of identifying people who are prepared to transact, right? And when they're prepared to transact, we need to have a process that gets them over the finish line, because if it takes them, you know, 3 months instead of 3 weeks or 3 days, I don't think that they're going to rate that experience better because we spent more time with them. What do you think, Gabby? Right? I mean, if you can knock the ball out of the park on the second trip, they're going to be the biggest raving fan. If it takes them 3 months and they lose 2 houses, you know, they might stick with you, but you know, they're going to tell their friends, boy, it's a really brutal process, right? You know, it's so competitive out. Yeah, okay, she says it directly. It sucks. I'll call it the way it is. And the question I want to put into your head is it that the buyer is unreasonable, or is that we're not coaching them correctly and setting the right expectations to have that positive outcome? And I think that it's not an extreme one or the other. There's a combination, and there's it's somewhere in the middle, but I think it has a lot more to do with the expectations and the way that we behave that determines the outcome. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, and sometimes we're too busy in the business to take a look at it and dissect it and figure out how do we deliver a better service to our clients. Because sometimes I've seen agents that are like, you know, I'm going to stick in it as long as it takes. If it takes us 6 months, 9 months to get a house, I'm not going to abandon my client. But I think maybe earlier on, we need to set different expectations for a client, because oftentimes it's frustrating for them, you know, in an environment like now. Maybe if they bought 6 months ago when the market was even more competitive, who had a lower rate, they'd be in there, and you'd be on to your next client and adding more value to the universe and thus making more money. If that makes any sense.
Even 6 months ago wasn't that easy because of the multiple offers.
It was hard. It was harder 6 months ago. I'm being direct, but
it depends on the client. my best client is an educated client who knows exactly what they want and who already knows some of the process, which is I lead them through. I find out it's very easy to work with them than working with somebody who will call you, hey, Marwan, when are you going to order that appraisal? I said, I'm not going to order that appraisal for you. You got to wait for the company. When are you going to do this? You have to wait. So you have two different kinds of clients. You have an educated clients who will make your life easy, the process easy, and you can help them faster. And you have different other clients who doesn't know anything about this. They mix everything together, but you have to be patient with them and you have to work with them one step at a time. And I find out the first one is much easier to work with, more successfully to get them through the process and find them the right house. The second one, which is the ones they just started looking for a new house, they might jump around and they might start looking at some stuff behind your back and talking to some other people.
So you prefer some, when you say an educated, you mean somebody who maybe bought a house before and is
Either that
experienced?
or went through the process with a friend or with a family member. Like they know exactly, not everything, but they know somewhat what's happening through buying a house.
Yeah, I think part of, when you put them in buckets, I think it influences the way that we behave as an industry. In other words, if somebody's bought before or if somebody's new, I think it's all about, building trust, rapport, setting expectations and going through the process. And, if we could be completely honest with, like, let's say, do you have a client, Marwan, that you've been working with for more than 6 months that's buying?
I had both of them and we closed them.
How long did it take to close?
I would say around between 4 to 6 months. We did two of them.
And how many offers did they make? And I'm using it as an example.
You'll be surprised. One time we put one day 3 offers on 3 properties at the same time. Okay. Multiple offers because we were losing left and right, 100,000, 50, 60,000 of an asking price. And we were surprised that time we put 3 offers, 2 of them were accepted. And we went through, I called my client and said, hey, you got accepted for both houses. Which one do you want? I want this one because it doesn't need a lot of work. One of them, which is we close within like 45 days. They stick with you and they work with you. And the other client is the same thing. We went through the same process. We lost an offer for 120,000 over asking. Somebody came in 5,000 more than me.
All right, somebody want to comment?
Yeah, I just think that when you get a buyer, their loyalty, it depends on how you approach the buyer and what you can teach the buyer, educate them before they start looking at houses. They have to trust you first. If they trust you and believe that you can do the job for them, they'll stick with you. Now, I'm not saying there's a 100% of loyalty there, because most buyers are not loyal. Buyers are liars, sellers are thieves. But anyway, if you can get a buyer to educate them enough and tell them, please stick with us, stick with me, and I'll find you the house. If you see something that you like on Zillow or Realtor.com, just call us and we'll check it out for you. Now, a lot of times, like he was just saying, a lot of times buyers will venture off on their own and they'll find listings through somewhere online and call the listing agent. Next thing you know, they bought a house through the listing agent, and that's going to happen. There's no way you can prevent that from happening unless they stay loyal to you. But I would say the majority of the buyers, if you educate them and have good conversations with them, I think a good portion of them will stay loyal and they'll stick with you.
So, and I'm going to go through my 11-step process, but what I want to outline is I really believe it's not, the raw material, which is the client, that impacts what happens. It's the combination of how we engage and what expectations that we set. And if somebody takes 6 months to buy, right? And if they could have a crystal ball, Marwan, and say, hey, if I would have paid, 10 or 15 or 20,000 more 6 months ago, and I didn't have to go through the process, and I could also substitute the process for stress, right? Process, stress of 6 months trying to find a house. Do you think it's stressful, Gabby, to spend 6 months as a buyer looking to find a house where you don't know what you're going to do? Do I renew my lease? What do I do? That's stressful. And for $10,000 or $15,000 or $25,000 in the grand scheme of things in the markets that we're in South Florida and New Jersey, does that make a big difference? Probably not, right? And but it takes, maybe it's not like we're deminimizing or we're saying, hey, overpay, hey, do this. But if we could look in the crystal ball, some of those people that maybe had regret at not being more aggressive at the house that they wanted, and we found a way to make them more comfortable in transacting, that's the point of what today is. And the point of today is to give you the mindset that, we should be able to, if we're up against 5 or 6 offers, we should be able to win 90% of the time, which is not logical. It's not rational, because if there's 5 offers, we should be winning 20% of the time, correct? But so much of our industry is doing it the same old, stale, broken way. And I think we need to be different. We need to rise above, level up in the process so that we can serve our clients better. And then if we serve our clients better, we put our clients' interest ahead of ours, then what happens is we deliver more value. And when we deliver more value, we get more income, right? It doesn't go the other way. It's not like we look for more income. We find a way to get somebody to do something that they're not supposed to do, or that they don't want to do. But I look at it, and there are so many people who are afraid of the process that they sabotage their transactions and don't do what they otherwise would do if they had full knowledge. Does that make sense?
I agree.
Something like, instead of looking for our advantage, to look for our client's advantage, which is, I never looked for my own benefit on a deal to benefit myself. I always look at myself, the last one to benefit. I would like to have my client happy. But can you just share with me, what do you mean, like, if an agent put himself first?
So I'm gonna, there are people in the business that will tell their client to do anything just to make a commission. And I'm not advocating for that in the least bit. I just want to be clear. But there are other people on the opposite side of the spectrum who are always trying to make sure that they save the last $1,000 for their client. And that's not what's in their client's best interest. You think you're serving the client by trying to negotiate $5,000 less. But if you were to go in that client that just took 6 months to close with you, Marwan, and you said, look, if we could have bought this property for 10,000 more early on, would that have been a better outcome for most people? And I believe it would be, because it's uneasy not knowing where you're going to be living in 6 months, right?
Correct.
So we may think that we're advocating, we're doing a great job for them, but we're absorbing some of that decision and not giving them all the information to go through the process and make the decision themselves. So if you could have the crystal ball theory and look back, would that client on their first offer 5.5 months ago bid 10,000 more if they knew it would take 6 months to get the process done? And I'm just saying, in a theoretical level, Robert, would you think most clients would say, hey, if I knew I could pay 10,000 more and cut 5.5 months off the process, I would have done it? What do you think?
I would think so.
Gabby?
Yeah, I think so.
1,000 more is like $5 on the mortgage.
Yeah, it's very minimal. And Marwan,
Yeah, you're right. But at that time, when they made the decision was theirs 100%, was not mine. We didn't know that, let's say, that $10,000 will give them the deal.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
But here's where I'm going to go into my process, and I'm looking for a lot of feedback from all of you, because you're living with this regularly. But at the end of this session, my goal is to change your mindset in terms of, if you have a client, okay, that you're committed to, you're putting their interests first, and you're just going all in at what you could do to help them. And helping them is not, being such a a difficult negotiator where it takes 6 months to get it, and saying, hey, I'm really loyal. I put their interest ahead of mine. It took 6 months. I stayed with them. Some people feel that that is in their client's best interest. And I'm not singling out you, Marwan, that is wrong, but I'm saying that if we have a different mindset and we can share that with the buyers, they might, with information, make a different decision. Fair enough?
Yeah,
No.
I don't look at it if it's been 2 months or 3 months or 6 months that there is something wrong. It's the way the process is and the way the client wants to behave. You cannot force a client to pay X amount of dollars over asking price.
Right,
And
so-
we are not comfortable with that.
You can educate.
You can educate them, yes. you can-
So here's something that I want to put out there, Marwan. If you were to go to every buyer that walks through the door and say, what's your expectation? How long is the process? How long do you think the process is going to take? Right before you even engage them. And you might even want to do that. Some people might say, I think I could buy a place in 2 weeks. Some people, I hear the market's tough. It's probably going to take me 6 to 9 months. Right. But we don't even ask that question. What's their expectation? What have they heard? What do they believe? Okay. I made sure that Mr. Carlos Cruz, who is our new, and is Samantha on, Carlos, or?
No, Samantha is jumping for a couple of minutes, and she
Okay.
had a previous engagement and couldn't make it, but she put a message for everybody with her contact information.
Okay, so the reason why Carlos was on last week and this week, I was down in South Florida with our Southeast Florida family, and I had 3 examples when I was door knocking with people about things that went wrong after they bought a house. And I personally bought an investment property, and my hot water heater went, and then a month later, the blower on the air conditioner went. And when you're in Southeast Florida, there's a lot of problems with use on HVAC equipment. And I just bought a warranty. I mentioned that last week, and I just think that in terms of a customer experience, it's like $500 or $600 to get a warranty, and it really makes you look good when a client calls up and says, I've only been here 2 weeks, Gabby. My air conditioner went. Can I go back to the seller? Has anybody gotten that call? Right? And did they have a warranty, Gabby, or no?
No.
No, it was no.
So-
It's a different situation, so no, they couldn't have even gotten one.
But I'm just saying, like, and if they don't buy one, if you at least offer it to them, because this is just like hitting me as a ton of bricks. And it might be like the concept of when you get a new car with a hot red color, you see all the other cars like that. And now, because it happened to me, and as I'm going around, I'm paying more attention to it. And especially for the agents on these great teams that we're building, the team members, they're like, Rob, I feel so bad. They just bought this house. What can I do for them? And I'm like, well, what you could have done and what you can, like, you own the house now. Welcome to home ownership is basically the answer. But if you didn't offer them and educate them on what a warranty does, and I know Rob Garver has mentioned that, his is paid off probably tenfold, as an investment, right? Mr. Garver?
Absolutely, yes.
So
Yes,
it feels really
absolutely.
bad, and it's a horrible call. And in South Florida, when I was door knocking, I had 3 people, share that experience with me, and on top of me having the experience directly. So with Carlos, if you offer a warranty, they know that they had it, they know what it can be. It's for a single family house, Carlos, it was $550.
Yes, around that money depends on the level of protection. It covers. It's around. I mean, that would be an average price. That's correct. And the warranty, it can be purchased by the seller and go through the life of the process of the purchasing, closing, all that stuff, and it continues into the new homeowner. So he will have he or she will have a protection for most popular items like air conditioning, heating systems, water heaters. Those are the most common ones. And for anybody just purchase a house and $700,000, $800,000 of expenses, it could be a lot of money. And sometimes they are not in the position to spend that money right away. But having the home warranty in place, that will give a great peace of mind, and it helps both ends of the transaction in a real estate situation.
I think a lot of us forget about home warranties. At least I do. I mean, and I'm glad you had Carlos on last week, because getting a listing or even working with a buyer and offering that service and explaining to them that, listen, if we close on this and 2 weeks later your air conditioner goes out, you're going to be calling me, rather than having the warranty protecting you on the electrical, plumbing, whatever the coverage is. But I think it's a great idea. I think it's really impressive when you're going for a listing that you covered the home warranty with it. A lot of agents don't. We forget about it.
And
And
the key
even
is it has to be purchased before, not after an incident happens.
Right.
yeah, I mean, and Robert, I think if we educate them and look for $50 or $60 a month, if you have a big expense, it covers it. When they call you up and say my hot water heater just went, you can go, Marwan, I'm glad you bought a warranty.
You know, it happened with me early this year, one of my projects. I was on the buyer side. And the seller side was also a Remax. So we went through the house and everything, and the buyer started complaining, oh, the air conditioner is all this, which is okay. We can get you, which is, I spoke to the listing agent, said, okay, why don't we give them a gift, a warranty? Said, okay, we'll give you a warranty for a whole year to cover everything, or we can give you XYZ store, like a gift certificate. What do you like?
Right. I mean, like what you're saying is like, and it also helps transactions go through, right? Because you're buying an existing house.
Yeah.
So anyway, Carlos, I wanted to make sure that I highlighted it again, because it's one of those, things that keeps hitting me, and I feel really bad when, especially I'm in the office and a new agent comes in and says, hey, my second sale, the new owner called me up and this happened. What do I tell him? I'm like, you can't call the attorney and ask him to, replace your hot water heater. It was working when you closed. And that's just the way it goes. So I'm just trying to, and then when they call you up and say my hot water heater went, and Gabby says, hey, I'm glad you bought that warranty, they're like, wow, that's great, because they might just be panicking, not even thinking about it. And then Gabby goes, hey, who else do you know that I can help, looking to buy or sell a house, right? Because you're now the hero. And that's what I'm talking about. And that's putting the client's interest ahead of yours, because if they don't need it, thank God the house is great. And if they do need it, you're directing them back to the fact that, you advise them to buy something that's reasonably inexpensive. Okay. So here it's now almost 10 o'clock. So I want to go through my granular steps here. And I want to go on record saying that, being an advocate for the client, doesn't mean negotiating so hard that they lose more homes, because I think sometimes we get caught in the process of we want to win, or we want to, make sure we get them the best deal. It's educating them on how to make the right decision for themselves. And when I say you put their interest ahead of yours, it really changes the way that you behave, right? It's like you don't even pay any attention to what happens to the commission, right? You're not looking for, how much am I going to make on this? You're looking at, hey, Gabby, how can I get you and your family into that house? And if I'm taking the actions and I'm doing that consistently, what's going to happen? You're going to close more homes. The money is going to flow into your bank account, and it's only going to flow into your account because you're doing the right thing and adding more value to the universe. And it sounds corny, but it is so true. Gabby said you have to learn the skill of effective communication. You have to learn it and practice it, right? So I'm going to have you present here, because the first thing is well, I mean, it's, you're doing fantastic and you hit the nail on the head. The first thing is to prepare the buyer to transact, right? Okay, set the expectations, tell them how it works. The second one is, set expectations, because not every market's the same, right? Some markets have extreme shortages. Some of them you might be able to, as their advocate, deploy a different strategy to buy the house, right? Tell them, look at, the price and the, what you pay compared to the asking price is not uniform across the market, because some sellers intentionally price their home auction style. some overprice it, right? So I can't say you can expect to pay 4.2% below or above the ask price. That's part of educating them. I would strongly encourage this practice is send them an electronic copy of the contract from .loop, maybe even fill their information into it and say, Marwan, once we find the right house, this is what the contract's going to look like, right? And tell them, once we get the offer accepted, we're going to need to select an attorney. Here's 2 people or 3 people I recommend. You might want to talk to them in advance, because who's ever put a contract together for a buyer, right? And then you're going into attorney review, and now this time of the year, the attorney that they used last time's on vacation, or the one that you prefer to use is not getting back to them, right? Set expectations so that the process goes smoothly. That's an unforced error when those things happen, right? And if they understand the process, they have the whole team set together. If I say to you, Rob, if once we find the right property, this is the contract we're going to use. All we need to do is fill in the property address and the terms. Now you have it ahead of time. And I say, when we find the property, this is how it's going to go. It also has an assumptive close that we're going to work together. And it's not manipulated, because if you're comfortable and you understand the process, I think you'll act more rational and there will be less drama and anxiety going through a transaction. Does that make sense?
It does, because your client will appreciate that, because they feel like you are taking that initiative, like, hey, we're almost there. I mean, not almost there, but this is the start of the road. And they'll probably feel comfortable.
You
Share
know,
with them some material, this is the way it's gonna be, this is what we need. You put them in ease.
Marwan, if you go to a client and say, hey, Marwan, is my client, some people, have experienced difficulty finding homes. The goal of our working together and doing a little bit of preparation is to make sure that I get this process a little bit simpler for you. We have a higher probability of a favorable outcome. In order to do that, we're going to do a little bit of homework up front. Does that not make sense? Will a buyer appreciate the fact that you say that instead of running to open up a door?
Sure. And also,
Right.
also instead of start scrambling to find an attorney, if they're offered, they're accepted, and don't know what to do.
Exactly. I mean, why don't you, if you're committed to buying and they're going to buy with you eventually, why not have them talk to an attorney ahead of time, right? So at least they have that comfort level there. So here's like some of my tips. Review the process of purchasing and the critical milestones, right? Everybody knows the get pre-qualified piece, right? Sometimes we miss the part, especially if it's an elongated process, Marlon, where it takes them 6 months to buy. They might, during that process, buy some new furniture on a deferred payment plan, and it appears on their credit and it changes their qualifying power, right? Rob, they might decide to buy a new car. Now they can't afford the house.
So I tell them, don't buy anything.
So, yeah, Marwan, you have a lot of experience, but some of us on the call, maybe we get sloppy. We forget to be consistent and explain that. Hey, here's another great one. Don't miss any payments.
Yep.
If you miss a silly credit card payment, it might put you back 6 months to buying. You're like, it was only a $29 Macy's payment. I can't buy a house because how many people think if they missed a $29 payment, it would affect their ability to buy a house? A lot of people think, well, that's nothing. That's only a credit card. But do we have any lenders on with us now? I think Frank was there, right? Frank? Lenders? All right, I guess they're muted. But I think if you miss a payment, it might lower your credit score significantly enough that you might not be able to afford the house over a $29 payment. Don't establish new debt. And another one, don't change your job before talking to the lender, because if the way that you get paid is differently, it might affect you. So, Gabby, if you work for a salon, you get paid a salary, and then you decide to go work someplace where you get paid based upon the work. Guess what? You're now self-employed. You can't buy a house, right?
Yeah, I have this.
I told my first time homebuyer, shut your credit card off immediately when you go.
Okay. So sometimes we just take for granted and we don't have those conversations. And, if we have trusted lending partners, they're having those, but we need to reinforce that, especially if the process gets elongated, right? Because, somebody's like, oh, I'm going to buy a car after I buy my house, right? Put it in that nice garage, and you go in the car dealership and I don't know if you've ever gone to a car dealership just to shop and came out with a new car. Anybody ever have that experience? I've had it. Yeah, I've had it. And then no house to park your car. So understand the process, pre-qualify. And I think virtually everybody does a phenomenal job at pre-qualifying financially, but I don't think we all do a great job at pre-qualifying the motivation. I'll repeat that. I think we are all accustomed to making sure that they can financially do it, but we often don't qualify the motivation, right? Somebody who's looking around and they might have a house in Ridgefield Park, and they want to get an extra bedroom and a bigger yard, but they're not committed to it. So the motivation's not equivalent to getting a transaction done. So, and I'm gonna give this, is Scott on the call still, Kaplan? Scott Kaplan?
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry.
So Scott said something that is a BFO. It's a blinding flash of the obvious, but I think it was also brilliant in terms of when you're working with buyers. And Scott, can you share some of the rules that you have and just repeat back to us what your effective rate is, or what your offer acceptance rate is?
Okay, so like, can you mute that? Sorry, Christina had her computer on also. When I'm working with a buyer, I make sure that they are ready, willing, and able buyers. I do a buyer consultation, which is what you've been talking about the entire meeting. We talk about their finances. We talk about the money down. We, in the past year, have been talking about whether it's cash over options or not. We talk about what that looks like to them. So what you've been trying to tell everybody is what I do on a normal basis. Once I find out what their real parameters are, I make sure that I only show them what fits in their parameters. Another thing that I tell them goes along with the lender and the pre-approval. I make sure that I speak to their lender every time to know their financial sense from the lender side. Now, there's always pertinent information that a lender cannot provide, but we know how to either dance around the bush or just kind of find out what's going to work. And the lender wants to work with us to make sure that we have the right information to make the right offer. As you were saying before, in terms of trying to get them the best deal, if it's the house that they love, then they will want to make the deal to get the house, especially if there's other people who want the same house they do. Once you've got the mental aspect of that buyer ready to go, and they know the information that we've told them about, A, the market, B, the situation with however they're going to be financing and related to their monies that they have available to them to put down. The next thing about that is to really kind of ask them the important questions about the home they're looking for. When you send anybody that's a buyer a list of homes from the MLS, and now that there's starting to be more homes on the market, this is the most prevalent. This is how we've done for the last, I want to say the last 10 years, but minus the last year and a half where you didn't have too many options. If you're sending home buyers an MLS list, chances are they're going to check 10 homes that are their favorite. Well, we all know if you go for more than 5 houses at any one day, they all blend together.
Okay, so I'm going to stop, Scott. I'm going to stop you there for a second. How many in a normal market where there's inventory, like how many houses do you typically show? I'm just going to ask some of the people in person. Marwan, how many houses would you show somebody in a day? They said there are 10 houses that they're interested in based upon what you sent them. How many do you show in a day? Max of 3. Gabby?
I think the most I've shown in one day was like 1 set of clients.
Now, when you show 8 to 1, does that get confusing?
Yeah. Well, but the only time I've really ever done that was when I was so far out.
Okay.
Okay, let's maximize our time.
So Scott is a Chairman's Club member, right, Scott?
Yes, sir.
In Remax, which is over, for those of you who are new here, it's over 500,000 gross commission. Very smart, very business-minded, very customer-centric individual. when I was talking with Scott, the thing that he mentioned to me, which in my mind was brilliant, what he's going to talk about next with the 5 houses in a day. So please, stop looking at your phone. Listen to what he has to say, because he's a chairman's club guy who makes time to take vacation, has life balance, and this is rock solid information. So roll, Scott.
Okay. So when you're sending them the emails, and they're always going to click a lot of houses, they're always going to have a ton of favorites. And generally, I always find that they have at least 10. So I call them up and I tell them, hey, great, I saw you have 10 hearts and, these are the houses you like. Like, yeah, okay, great. Now do me a favor. I want you to go back through those 10 and I want you to pick your top 5. Go through them, the things that we've talked about, and maybe they said they like the yard or, the kitchens. I was like, know that this is the house that you want, and I want you to pick me your top 5. So they'll be like, okay, I've never had anyone say, oh, no, I don't want to do that. I want to see 10 houses. So they go back and they do their own homework and they pick their top 5. Then they call me back. I'm like, okay, great. So these are your top 5 selections. And I go through again. I already know the positives about what they want about a house. I have my notes and I schedule those 5 houses. Now, I schedule houses in order of convenience of driving time. I don't care if their favorite one is first or last. It doesn't matter to me. Once we start going to the houses, I always print them the 8 picture, which in South Florida, our MLS lets you do an 8 picture with like a brief description. I print them all 5 houses with their pictures. And when we meet, I give them the pamphlet of their 5 houses and a pen. And we go to the first house and we look around, we talk about it. Now, also generally, most people, and there's always the exclusion, but you can be in and out of a house in 10, 15 minutes. So we go through the house and I ask them, what did they like about the house? They tell me what they like. And I was like, what didn't you like about the house? I'm like, okay. At the end of that, I ask, is this a good option? Would you buy this house? And sometimes I say yes, sometimes I say no. Okay, great. Let's go to the next one. We go to the next one. We do the same thing, walk around the house, find out what they like, find out what they tell me is, their favorite features of the house. And then I ask them, okay, great. Now compared to the first house, which do you like better? This one or the first one? Now they tell me which one they like better. Even if both houses were not the perfect house, they're still going to have a preference of which one they like better. Then we go to the third one and I'm like, okay, guys, same thing, walk around the house. They tell me what they like, what they don't. And then I ask the same question. All right, now, which house out of the 3 do you like the best? Now, there was a preference between 1 or 2. So we're going to hypothetically say it was the first house to make it easy. So now I'm like, you said number 1 was your favorite. Here we are at number 3. Which one do you like the best? And they're going to be like, no, we still like number 1 the best. This one was really good and maybe second place, but we like number 1 the best. I'm like, okay, great. So let's go see the 4th house. We go to the 4th house.
So Scott, I think like this is like the blinding flash of the obvious, because whatever one is the highest, you just go to the next house, you see if that one overcomes the first one. And the way I've seen most of our associates come in, they go back to the office or they go to a coffee shop. Here's the 5 houses, which do you like best? And, when I've been working with some newer agents, people will come in and say, well, I like the second one because it has the new kitchen and the pool, but no, that was a combination of the 3rd and the 4th. So it's really confusing when you do it like that. They can't remember, you can't comprehend all 5. Everything blends together. So I'm giving you a shout out, Scott, for the blinding flash of the obvious and a rock solid tip on how to come to the end of the day where they know what they want. And if you do it that way, I think they have more certainty when they're done previewing. Would you agree?
Absolutely. They actually, by the end of the day, they've told me their favorite house. They're actually ready to make an offer on their favorite house because all day they talked about why that house was better than all the other houses. So psychologically, they sold themselves the house on why they liked it the best. They narrowed down from 10 to 5, from 5 to 1. And we always have a second favorite option that if the market is tough or if there were 2 favorites, I have no problem making 2 offers at the same time and letting them choose if we get them both or if we only get one or the other. Again, they've already psychologically picked the house. And that's how I'm able to make normally get an offer on a buyer within 1 week of getting that buyer. And a lot of times with only 1 day of showings. And then of course you do the homework with the agents that listed the house, find out what they're looking for. Always call the agent, always try and make friends, and always try and do your right comps to know what you're talking about when you speak to that listing agent, whether they're right, wrong, or indifferent. If you have enough information and you try and make friendly, it'll give you an edge over every other agent that just sends an offer.
But now that is not, Scott, that's not rocket science, but that is tangible, relevant, quality advice to use to make the process a little bit simpler. And if the process is simpler and the mission is clear, people are going to be more motivated to transact, in my opinion. So, you know, I mean, Scott, you do a lot of fantastic things. You do a lot of more advanced, sophisticated things. But I just think that was something worth sharing with your colleagues here. And you know, Scott has life balance. Probably want to have more, but you have balance, and you're making a good income because you're doing things right. So I just wanted to call you out on that, and I wanted to thank you for sharing that with me, because hopefully, you know, some of the participants here will, you know, resonate that information and do things a little bit differently.
Rob, there are a couple of comments in the chat box that are saying what he's doing is 100%. You know, that people are excited by what he's just laid out for everyone. And the one comment which actually happened with an agent when I was looking for something in Florida many years ago, she showed me a bunch of houses in one day, but at each house, when we walked out, she wrote the notes right on the listing sheet of what my wife and I had to say about each house, so that we could go back and she could say, okay, look, on this house, this is what your thoughts were about it. And I found that to be a very helpful thing too. And I'm sure Scott is doing something very similar to that, if not that exactly.
I always do take notes, and yes, listening to them, but I have them make sure. That's why I give them a pen. I have, of course, my, you know, team pens. So I give them a pen, I give them their little packet of the houses, and I have them write their notes so they don't forget, and even make nicknames for the house. Psychologically, if you're telling them everything about why they like a house, they'll agree with you, but they're not going to be sold themselves. So it's always better to ask questions, let them answer, and they will sell themselves the house. Let them talk. Sometimes we talk too much.
Yeah.
Oftentimes we do.
You know, there's another way too, is to identify when you're showing that many properties, 5 properties. It gets a little confusing sometimes with buyers, but point out certain features of the property that stand out, like if the house has a red door, or if it has an upgraded bathroom or something special about it, is to note it on your sheet. Because a lot of my buyers, when I take them out, you know, they go, we like that house with the red door, or the one that's got the painted wall, or something like that. This is how you can identify and recognize which one is the best one. But yeah, it's Scott's way to do it is the way we should all be doing it.
So just by a little poll here, if you take people out and they show them 3 to 5 houses, you know, do you expect to make an offer after a tour of 3 to 5 houses, Marwan, or is it 60-40, 50-50?
No, it could be 50-50.
Gabby?
I would say like
70-30, Rob? Scott, you show somebody 5 houses, like what's the likelihood of them making an offer at the end of 5? Mr. Kaplan?
You get about a 60-40 chance.
That's Ron. Scott?
He had to go change. He has a showing appointment. I'm sorry, a listing
Okay.
appointment. Sorry.
Okay.
But
No worries.
it is after 5 houses. I would say 80% would make an offer.
Okay. Now, so if somebody's at 50 and somebody's at 80, is that the client or is that us and I just put that out there, I'm not answering it, but you gotta ask yourself, is it, the client that's making that decision, or is it the expectation that we're putting out there? And I think it's got
Could
to,
be us, because maybe not send or pick the right house from the beginning. Maybe we misunderstood some points that looking for, could be us.
so I think if you were to have a theoretical, client, and they both said they wanted to see the same 5 houses, I know it's not practical that this to happen, but you have the same exact DNA, the same exact, they want to see the same 5 houses, but they're looking at it with different agents. I don't think the outcome's going to be the same. I think the person that has 80% of the time they make an offer probably gets 80% of that person to make an offer. The person who's got an expectation of 50%, might not have that process go as it would with the other person. Yes. So
Rob, I'm sorry, I'm back.
yeah, I think what we do influences how they behave. And again, it's not self-serving for our own interest. It's for figuring out what's in the best interest of the client. And if the best interest of the client is to make an offer, but they're unsure of the process, when they're unsure, there's incomplete information. What do? They withdraw from doing what they know they need to do, right? Because fear, false evidence appears real. They're going to just sit back and wait. Maybe it's too soon to buy a house, right? I'll bet you have clients, if you don't discuss how the process works, oh, we can't buy in this is only our first day out, right? I mean, do you think that there are some people out there that have that expectation?
Absolutely, yes.
Oh, I just want to go take a look at the house. Are you pre-approved? No, I just want to go take a look at the house.
So again, everybody's different, and the expectation, and I think the more clarity that we have, like if they've seen the contract, they understand how the process goes, then it's easy for them to slip into the process of transacting. And that's what they're there for. They're there to transact. Okay. They're not there to looky-loo. The reason why they're looky-looing is because that they don't have the comfort level or the confidence to complete the transaction. And part of that is on us. So if we have a bunch of great experienced professionals here, some of them, when they show 5 houses, get 50% of the time somebody makes an offer, and some of us have 80% of the time. Well, it's not that we're picking the wrong clients. It's not that we're showing them the wrong properties, because a lot of times we're educating them and we're sending the properties. They're saying, these are the ones I want to see. It's the way that we explain the process, build rapport and trust, that influences whether they make an offer. And the second level is whether they make a reasonable offer likely to get accepted, right? Put them ahead of our interest. So if that makes you think, that's what I wanted to do. Reviewing local market conditions, I think we all do a great job of that. Some of us go a little bit more into statistics, some don't. Rediscussing the offer process, right? You might have went over it earlier, but you just need to reiterate so that they're comfortable with how it works, right? Talk about, are we willing to do any type of limitations on home inspection? Saying, hey, we're not going to nitpick a scratch on the floor or nick in the wall, but we are going to look at major structural, environmental, mechanical systems, right? You know what, Marwan? It's a very competitive market. Many of the offers that, we submit and many of the offers I receive on my listings have something called an appraisal gap, right? And you probably want to talk about that before you make your first offer, so that it's not the first time they're hearing about it when they're ready to make an offer, right? Now, are you all putting appraisal gaps into most of your offers? Not so much, not so much. Ron and Scott, or anybody else want to say, are you putting in like a tolerance for a low appraisal into your offers?
A tolerance, well.
So Ron, if that $300,000 buyer buys something for $340,000 and it's $40,000 above asking price, are you putting something in the offer saying that we'll pay $330,000 even if it under appraises?
Yes, you can discuss that with them up front. When showing the properties, and if you tell them you have to be aggressive on your offers, and if you see something that you like, chances are you're going to have multiple offers on it. So you have to be aggressive, maybe make that waive the inspections or come in a little higher with the cash. I think you have to educate them a little bit more. But going back to your percentage at 80%, I mean, every situation is different with buyers. I mean, you know, you could take out 5 buyers. I mean, I've worked with buyers, so many buyers before. When you take them out and you show them 4 or 5 properties, I didn't really show them 5. I stick to 3 to 4 maximum, and go through what Scott was saying. You know, each give them a brochure on each property and say, make your notes as you walk through. And they do make their notes, and I always ask them at the very end, what do you guys think? And they'll just look at me and go, no, or maybe. Now, if they have 10 properties that they picked out, they might want to see 2 or 3 of the other 5 that they picked out. So sometimes it goes on a day later or 2 days later before they can make up their mind. So like the 80% is, I think, a little bit high. But as far as the appraisal is concerned, I would think that you have to kind of put that out there, let them know that there might be an issue with it not appraising. You have to know the difference in cash.
Well,
I usually don't waive, sorry.
Rob, that
Rob, I
works for
usually don't
me.
waive full appraisal. I usually just say up to a specific amount, $10,000, $5,000 above appraisal value, rather than waive the full thing.
We do the same with Team Kaplan. Scott does the same thing. He would put an amount if it is. And one of the things he would do to the client, he would ask them, you know, are you okay? Like, do you like this property enough? If you lose it, is that something that you're okay with? If, you know, somebody else ends up bidding higher. And that's one of the things, of course, you know, he does the homework as well and always knows what the appraisal value is going to be at, you know, usually within $5,000. So.
And we're running out of time, but I want to mention, like, I don't think clients understand exactly what we do in the process. I think they think our contribution is limited. Okay, and if they understood everything that we did, I think they would be more rational in making decisions. And like, if you talk to your buyer and say, look, here's what I do. When we find a house, I'm going to do some research on how the local market's behaving. Depends if the house has been on the market for 60 days and had a price reduction, or if it's a hot property on the market. I'm going to call the listing agent. I'm going to show you how properties that go under contract in 10 days or 5 days or less behave in Ridgefield. Okay. I'm also going to show you, Marwan, how, you know, Gabby, when she lists her properties, is usually getting, you know, 4 to 5% more than the market. Okay, so Gabby is a really talented agent. She prices her properties auction style. So you have the market, you have how long it's been on the market, and you have the listing agent. If you were to explain that to a client, do they think that we're looking at that stuff? And I hope we are looking at that stuff. And then, you know, even beyond, you know, just those things, you know, you're probably going to give Gabby a call and say, hey, Gab, it's Marwan, I just showed your property. You know, you have a lot of interest. Like, you're going to feel out and see how much information you can gain, right? And some agents will be inappropriate and share what they shouldn't, right? Because they know you for 15 years, Marwan. So they're going to tell you, hey, you know what? I'm expecting only 1 offer. You know, I'm surprised it's been so slow. Or they're going to say, hey, we already have 2 offers. You know, both of them are slightly above ask price. So you go back to the client and you put the client's interest first. Say, hey, you know what? I called Gabby. There's already 2 offers on this property, and both of them, she said, are over ask price. I know Gabby. You know, I trust her. We need to decide how we're going to navigate through this. They have no idea what we do, and if they did, they would appreciate and value our advice more than they do if we don't otherwise communicate that. You know, when they have their team lined up, their home inspector, everything, they're ready to transact. They're more likely to make an offer. That shows their motivation. If they're like, well, let's wait until after we find the right property, you know, you put that in the way that you assess how motivated are they. You know, we had, there was an agent who since retired. So I just mentioned her first name, Mary, in Westfield, and she was working with a client for over a year. And one day I came into the office on a Saturday and the clients were sitting in the conference room waiting for Mary. I'm like, how did you get in? Oh, we went in the employee door. They've been looking for so long. That's a true story. And Mary was like the nicest person, but she just didn't have the ability to, you know, get them to realize what their best interest was, or realize these people weren't committed to buying. So you have to educate them on the process, guide them to areas, advise them on the process, consult as needed, refer competent professionals. If you have a competent professional that says concisely and clearly how the process goes, you know, they're more likely to be rational through the process, right? Use all available data to negotiate effectively, okay? It includes contacting the listing agent. You know, look at how homes are performing. It's almost like a reverse CMA if somebody's really interested, right? You know, if they're interested when you come back from seeing the properties, do you write the offer up right then? Or do you say, hey, give me 15 minutes, I'll do some numbers and then reinforce what they're doing?
Yeah, I'd say,
Give me 15 minutes to write up the numbers.
Yeah.
Give me a few minutes to share with you, you know, some
Absolutely.
unemotional data, right?
Absolutely.
To get you to make whatever's in your best interest. And then just discuss, hey, you know, if Marwan, this house is an 8.5 for you, and I would feel totally comfortable saying that there is no perfect home. Every home has limitations just by definition. Like some house is going to be closer to downtown, some house is going to have a bigger backyard, some house is going to be on a quieter street. So at 8.5, in my opinion, I'm comfortable telling Marwan at 8.5 is really like a 9.5 or a 10, because there is no perfect house. So let's talk about a strategy so that we can win this, right? And use language that, you know, puts their interest above ours, but hopefully gets them to transact if that's the right property. So these are some tips. I don't think that there's anything like earth-shattering, but it's just a combination of common sense and good strategies that sometimes we might shortcut. And I'm going to leave it with, and then I will take some calls about questions, but I'm going to leave it with, our expectation has more influence in the outcome of a transaction than we could ever imagine. You know, if we expect 50% of the people to make an offer and somebody else expects 80, guess what those numbers are going to be? 50 and 80. Okay. And we look at exceptions, but if you're looking at it like a baseball player, okay, and if their career batting average was 300, okay, but they had the time when they bat 250 and the time they batted 350, 300 is what they own. That's their history. That's their performance. Okay. What our history tells us is basically what our numbers are. We own those, and we just have to be careful that we're not influencing in a negative way how people transact. And sometimes that might be by setting better expectations from the onset and following these 11 steps. So 90%. Everybody's going to help more people, and in return at the end of the year you'll have a larger bank account. And it's not you're going to have a larger bank account because you're trying to figure out a way to get people to buy stuff they don't want. Will never work. Any questions?
That was great information though today. Really good.
All right, well, we got a summer weekend. Let's either enjoy it or be productive and you know, help our clients. All right. Be well,
Thank you. Have a
everybody.
great weekend.
Oh, hold on. One last thing. New Jersey, folks. I'm going to be next weekend is door knocking. We had a fantastic experience in Florida. I think we probably turned over about 24 leads in 2 days of door knocking, and actually even have a couple of testimonial videos because everybody couldn't believe, you know, how productive it was. So next Saturday and Sunday, I believe we'll do Morris Union in the morning on Saturday, Saturday afternoon, Monmouth County, and then Sunday, Bergen, Essex, and the rest of New Jersey. So if you're interested, look for an email, respond, and we'll set that up. All right. Have a great weekend, everybody.